Africa is experiencing an epidemic of monetized and commercialized elective politics, which is a threat multiplier of democratic backsliding. Unregulated money in elections is further raising the stakes and turning electorates into violent political battles in many African countries. When money becomes the main motivator for political socialization and determinant of electoral outcomes, it defeats the democratic principle of elections, reflecting the will of the people as they become a reflection of the power of money. Unfortunately, the legal and institutional framework for campaign financing in most African countries is either very weak or non-existent. In Kenya, Nigeria, Madagascar, and Tanzania, progressive laws have been enacted. The issue is reluctance to implement them. Additionally, there is lack of a vibrant continental coalition of citizen observers advocating for transparency in political financing. Alliance for Finance Monitoring (ACFIM) has brought together like-minded organizations from across the continent in response to the threat posed by monetization and commercialization of elective politics.
Very good. Welcome to all our dear listeners. Thank you for joining us on the second day of our virtual conference on money in politics. My name is Felix Kafuma, and I welcome you for this fourth panel discussions, where we're looking at the campaign, finance, and participation of women and youth in African elections as candidates. I'm going to hand over this session because it's being moderated by Peter Mwanangombe from the Christian Church Monitoring Group. But it's important that I also provide a context and the background as to why we are having this discussion or why we are having this conversation at this point in time. The objectives of the conference, just for those who are joining us for the first time, are mainly to increase the understanding of the role of money in politics in Africa and the challenges it poses for democratic renewal. But also we hope that this conference can explore the regulatory and non-regulatory options relating to the issue of money in politics and what is currently feasible in terms of monitoring online campaign financing. Then lastly, develop action plans for building a continental coalition of CSOs advocating for campaign finance transparency. So we expect at the end of these 2 days to be able to increase the understanding of the role of money in politics in Africa. Most of our African countries have embraced elections as one way of changing leadership, of appointing leaders. So it is important to place the role of money in the way we manage our politics and our elections, especially as a continent, but also explore the regulatory and non-regulatory options relating to the issue and propose solutions to remedify the situation. Lastly, to lay the ground for a continental initiative on political finance transparency. And that's why we are gathering here today. And once again, it's a very good morning where I am at good afternoon, good evening, everywhere where you're catching us from. We are live, Asia, Africa, the Americas. It's good to have you here. And at this point, allow me to invite Peter, who is this the session head, to take us through the next phase of this panel. Peter, over to you.
Thank you very much, Felix, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us this morning, and wherever you are listening to us from. It's a pleasure to be a session moderator, and I looked at the panelists. We have an interesting group of young people with lots of experience to add to this conversation, but also invite you to keep the conversations going by taking down whatever points you have, as well as contributing during the plenary session. just in addition to the overview that has been provided by Felix already, just maybe to add one or two things that there are a number of financial and cultural barriers for women and youth, entering politics and getting their names on the ballot paper as electoral candidates. And these challenges relate to political financing, because with the increasing cost of elections, mostly female and young candidates are disproportionately affected due to their limited access and control to financial resources. So as you can see, issues of money in politics is not a small issue, as it affects a wide range of our society, including our focus for discussion this morning, which is women and the young people. Consequently, many women and young people are excluded from contesting on elective positions due to the high cost of entering associated with campaigning. So then this problem, of course, is compounded by electorates that impose unreasonable financial demands on women seeking election. So this money in politics also extends really to the electorates, because they believe that there is always something for them in exchange for the vote. But let's try to hold that for now and unpack it as we go. So without much ado, allow me to introduce our panelists this morning. And I'm excited that we have Takuzwa from Zimbabwe. Takuzwa is the Citizens Coalition for Change, which is the CCC, Youth Task Force Coordinator, a committed human rights defender, academic freedom fighter, and dedicated social justice activist. Takuzwa Makadi.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you, and good to have you. Our next panelist is Mwanaisha from Tanzania, who is a lawyer by trade and entered politics in 2018, and has served as a secretary for both the women and youth wing of Alliance for Change and Transparency, which is ACT Wazalendo, Tanzania. At the age of only 29, Mwanaisha contested for a seat in the Tanzanian National Parliament. She is currently the secretary for the youth wing at ACT political party. Karibuni, Mwanaisha.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm Mwanaisha Mdeme from Tanzania, and secretary for the youth wing at ACT Wazalendo. I'm glad to be here, and I hope we have a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we also have Tion Mekonnen from Ethiopia, who is a woman and youth inclusion advocate and researcher. She is also a former youth department head of the major opposition political party in Ethiopia, which is Ethiopian Citizen for Social Justice. She joined the party believing that her participation in politics would inspire young people like her to stand up for their rights and say no to injustice. And I hope that throughout the discussion, then you could shed more light on how you've managed to inspire these young people and where they are at as we speak. She strongly believes that their representation is key for them to get what they want from their country, and that she is also a lawyer with an LLB degree from Addis Ababa University and currently studying human rights law in the same university. Welcome to this session, Sion.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you very much for having me.
Right, so we will proceed in this fashion. We'll have our panelists shed a few, shed light to a few of the questions that we're going to ask, and then we'll also allow you, our panel, our our participants rather to use the chat section to put down your comments, but also the hand function to raise your hand and make your contributions. We also have interpreters within the platform for our French-speaking colleagues. So lastly, I will also introduce Albina Musakanya from Zambia. She is a co-founder of the Center for Young Leaders in Africa and has 8 years of experience and expertise of active political participation and advocating for youth and women participation in governance and political space. She has contested in the general elections of the Zambian electoral general elections rather twice, as a councillor in 2016 in her ward, and as well as a member of parliament for Livingstone Central constituency in the 2021 elections. She is also passionate about business and entrepreneurship, innovation, and cybersecurity. An interesting issue there, as we know, cyber security laws have become common across Africa, and mainly to regulate the online spaces for civic participation. So we would hope that Albina will be able to shed more light in view of how we can manage that space as well. She is also passionate. She also, I beg your pardon, writing is also one of her multi-interests and hobbies. And she believes that men and women are partners when it comes to development and that they should work together. Albina, welcome to this panel discussion.
Hello, thank you everyone. I'm glad to be here and I hope we're going to have a fruitful discussion. Thank you. Sorry, Peter, I can't hear you. I think your mic is off.
Sorry, thank you. Just a housekeeping rule that all our mics should be on mute unless you've been granted permission to speak. So let's get right into it. And I'll start with you, Albina. We know that women and youth are challenged with access to campaign finance resources. Share with us your perspective of financial barriers to the full and equal participation of youth and women as candidates in Zambia. And probably you could highlight the 2 instances that you contested for office.
Thank you so much. First and foremost, I would like to say, I don't know about other countries, but in Zambia, most of our women are economically underprivileged, and it's kind of difficult for them to contest in elections because most political parties would want to adopt people who are financially stable. So you find that a lot of women and young people who might have the potential to actually contest in elections and be leaders in their countries or communities are unable to do that because of their financial incapabilities. So I think on my part, I was a bit privileged because my political party actually paid for my nomination fees. But in as much as they did that, it's more of 10% of the actual expense when it comes to campaigns and elections. It's a bit of a barrier because a lot of people think like elections is only about being nominated, but there's also a lot of financials that get involved when you start campaigning. And a lot of young people do not have capacity when it comes to campaigning because they do not have the finances to ensure that their campaigns are a success. And because of this monetization that is going on in African politics, a lot of our voters out there, they they presume that when you have the financial capacity, you are able to like lead them. So when it comes to youth and women, you end up finding that they won't vote for the youth and women because they do not have those finances that the voters are looking up to. So I think it's a big challenge when it comes to politics itself and the elections and the campaigns, because you need to invest more in the campaign if you want to win. And the people also have to believe in your ideas. But in our African politics, the scene is different. People do not just believe in your views, they also want to take part, as in the share of your financials. So you find that a lot of people, especially young people, the youths and the women, who shun away from politics because they do not have the capacity to actually like invest in the people, because the people want to take part in your money there and then. They don't want to see going to do, they don't believe in that. So that's one of the hindrances that young people and women face during campaigns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And maybe just out of interest, were you the first option in terms of adoption for a political party, or you were a fallback plan that when the person that they initially wanted did not, just so that we understand how then your role as how you were, nominated by the party? Were you the first option or were you a fallback plan?
Okay, I was the first option because the first time when I contested in 2016, I showed my potential. So when it came to 2021 elections, I was automatically like one of the best contestants because they were able to see my capabilities and my potential. So I was one of the topmost people that they would actually vote for or adopt in my political party. So it also depends, like if you lay a foundation in your political party, it's easy for your political party to notice you and to actually vote or nominate for you. But it's usually difficult, even if when you lay your foundation, if you do not have the finances, it's difficult for them to actually go for you because they'll always choose somebody who has more financial stability over you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Albina, and I'll be getting back to you, but allow me to move to Takudzwa, the CCC Coalition for Change, and also perhaps your reflection on the challenges with regards finances, but also the sharp increase in the nomination fees from the ZEC perspective in the just ended Zim elections. I know presidential candidates were paying up to about 20,000 US dollars. And I think members of parliament, that was revised to about 1,000 US dollars and then 500 or something like that. Please shed more light on that, as well as the challenges that you believe young people and women face vis-a-vis campaign finance.
Thank you. I think, as you just articulated, the exorbitant nomination fees are a barrier to the young people whom we know particularly well that they are not economically stable. They come from a society in which they are already unemployed, misemployed, underemployed, and sometimes they might be employed and yet earning $2 United States per daily per capita, and you're expecting that young person to be paying an exorbitant nomination fee for them to participate in an election. So this already is a contributing factor by the state for them to deliberately reduce the participation of young people in electoral systems and also in politics in general. So you tend to note that the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, when it had these nomination fees, people challenged and voiced out, but they seem to have had closed ears and also closed eyes, because if they had eyes, they would know that young people are trying by all means to break all those barriers that are set forth in front of them. They are the innovators and creators. They are part of the 21st century, which demands young minds to also participate in decision-making processes, thereby coming into the political sector. So myself, we recently just came out of from an election process. I also managed to become the member of parliament here in Zimbabwe, part of the youth quota. So I believe that there is need for young people to be empowered financially. But beyond that, we have also seen the adoption of a youth quota recently in Zimbabwe, in which each political party which has succeeded, particularly in a province, to acquire the majority of parliamentary votes, can appoint one youthful person. So that is a welcome stance. But in a population like Zimbabwe, where we know that the demographic bulge in terms of population matrix, the youth are more in terms of numbers. We believe that young people should be given a chance, so they should increase the number of young people who are in parliament. So instead of having a youth quota, we should actually be having an elderly quota, because those are the few. But to respond to national issues, we should not also pass a blind stance to say only young people should be there. It's an intergenerational consensus that is needed for us to get into the path of nation healing, for us to make sure that everyone is on board. So our stance is to say an elderly quota, where we have the youth as people who acquire the greatest population, and then we know that the youth are going to be representing more and more into parliament and also in local authorities. So as part of the youth who are in parliament, this is the context that we have in Zimbabwe, which is also backed up with a shambolic economic sector, in which already we have a high rate of unemployment at around 80%, 80.4%, and we also have a high inflation rate. So already these hard core issues that come into our economy affect young people, because these are the same people we expect to be participating at the backdrop of us challenging a system of those who are entitled and believe in ageist tendencies. That are those people in politics who think that young people have nothing to offer. They need to firstly grow up, grow a financial muscle. But I think we have tried as young people in Zimbabwe to say, in as much as we might not have monetary power, what we need is people power. So people power is what has driven us to change the shrinking realities in terms of youth participation, and also women, whom we know that are also being affected by the same economic environment, and also the cultural aspects of gender imbalances that have always been there. So to me, the context I've laid out, and also the response to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission in form of the exorbitant nomination fees. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Takudzwa. I just wanted to get you clearly, when you talk about youth empowerment, what exactly is this youth empowerment, and how do we then ensure that this form of empowerment also remains within the regulatory framework, or indeed what is allowable? Just shed more light on that.
Thank you very much. My definition of youth empowerment is the mutilation of exclusionary practices and adoption of inclusionary policies. By this, I mean that the law should take its course by setting up policy frameworks that say, if a young person is going to be participating in an election, we need a reduction on nomination fees, number one. Number two, we also need to make sure that they are also capacitated from the state payers' money that people get. So you know particularly well that a state functions on the basis of taxation as revenue, and young people are also taxpayers. But we are saying that tax that we pay should further representation. So there is no tax without representation. But we are also saying that amount can be allocated to young people who will be participating in elections, to say this particular money is given to every young person who thinks that they need to participate in politics. So already in terms of the law, we are already setting up something that empowers the youth. But empowerment also goes beyond that, because campaign materials, yes, we might need that. But in terms of capacity building, empowerment to tell the youth that, you know, it's more about the people power than the monetary power, to tell them about campaign mechanisms that they might need to know, that might, you know, lead to low cost, high impact strategies, rather than saying, you know, you are just participating in an election, you need money, but also what are the things that a person can do and still win an election. So capacity building, in which we build leadership from an aspect of the government deliberately, to come up with the boot camps, to come up with workshops, to come up with an engagement narrative discourse that sets young persons on the table of decision making. Because at the end of the day, we need that level of empowerment. So it comes from law, it gets into the social sector in form of capacity building. It also
Okay, I think we
thank you.
all right, thank you. Sorry, we kind of lost you there, but I think you make an important point about other forms of investment in regards building or strengthening youth participation. And what I see there is capacity building, which I would like to call myself political participation education. So thank you very much for that. And let's move on to you, sorry, we move on to you, Sion, and just get your views with regards challenges and barriers as they relate to finances.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me. Initially, I'd like to highlight the importance of having the participation of youth and women in politics in general, and in elections in particular. In Ethiopia, the people under 30 consist 70% of the whole population, and women are around 51%. So democracy cannot be achieved by leaving anyone behind, let alone the significant number of the population. This is the first reason, and women and youth have their own peculiar challenges and needs, and no one should be deciding for them other than themselves, as no one is going to address their lived experiences. And the other reason is democracy. For democracy to blossom and for a country to be developed, the wisdom and the energy women and youth hold should be utilized. Ethiopia is not getting what
Sion?
it should from. Can you listen to me? Yeah.
Are you able to put on your mic, so I mean your video, so we can see you?
I am a little bit struggling with my internet, so if I on the camera,
okay, all right, no worries. When you get an opportunity, please just put that up so we can be able to see you. And if you could also speak closer to your microphone.
All right, so can you listen to me now?
Perfectly clear. I think this is good enough. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So the other reason is, like I have said, for democracy to blossom and for a country to be developed, the wisdom and the energy women in youth hold should be utilized. And Ethiopia is not getting what it should from its youth and women. In the meantime, youth and women are not getting what they deserve and demand from their country. For this and a lot more reasons, we need their participation, right? So when we go to the challenges of election financing and in general their participation, the first reason is our political landscape. Ethiopian politics is known for its volatile and hostile nature. It is not inviting for anyone to participate, and we have a long history of fighting with each other and war to take over power. So this nature of our politics pushes away women and youth whom in normal circumstances are not active participants. They don't want to get into the fire, like, because that's what we call our politics, it's a fire. While they have other family responsibilities, because politics in Ethiopia, as I said, is highly tied with being arrested, killed, and forced disappearance, and also violence. For women, it has also like cultural and societal barriers. So we are used to see women as sole men as sole decision makers, and women are expected to be quiet, shy, submissive. So politics is something that takes the skills of being bold, assertiveness, and loud. So how do we expect women to have these skills overnight, or just when they enter into politics, and they also have burdens in their houses and with their kids, right? So the other factors can be like, which is also like in a way relates to having finances and being economically able, is women are less educated than men and they are not aware of their rights. The other major factor is gender-based violences for women to be like to which prevents women to participate in politics in the first place, and even it's also a reason for those who engage to leave the political space. But for youth, as I've said, our political nature is very volatile, but it would be ignorance to say they don't participate at all, because all the changes and reforms we have witnessed are caused by the sacrifices of youth paid since the monarchical regime to the reform that brought the government of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to power. Women are, youth at the forefront of these political changes. So when we say youth don't participate, it is in the formal and the formal political and governmental structures. Unfortunately, always when the long-awaited change arrives, we have the tendency to sideline the youth who sacrificed. So the major challenge for them is unemployment, and also like women, there is a high illiteracy rate in Ethiopia, and also cultural barriers and challenges for youth. Financial issues are also the major challenges for both youth and women, because they're not educated, they're unemployed, they're like highly staying at the house, so they cannot pay for like their candidacy. So as you know, elections are very expensive investments. I have seen this with my political engagement with Izema, and we have had a national election just 2 years ago. To campaign and to address and to reach people and to convince them with your ideas, you need to have money for flyers, brochures, TV airtime, and other major costs, which youth and women really cannot pay for. So from experience, the major source of financing in Ethiopia was the National Election Board of Ethiopia, and it supported political parties with money. But during the last election, for example, it gave certain amount of money per candidate for campaign, and it incentivized political parties by giving around $2,000 per female candidates. And also it allocated airtime at the national televisions for campaigning, and political parties who had more women candidates had more television airtime. So, and also it had regulations to prevent harassment and discrimination against women. But unfortunately, the most political parties didn't use the finance to support women candidates. Rather, they used the money to sell their parties in general and the major figures of their political parties who are male. And the National Board of Election didn't have a regulation on how to use the money as long as they use it for the campaigning, and it was of no help for women. The other source was public fundraising. Here, the ruling party has an advantage because no one wants to be marked as an opposition party supporter. So the ruling party raised a lot more money from the public, and it also used public resources, including the major national media, to campaign and to sell its candidates, which benefited, in a way, women and youth members of the ruling party, but that was a loss for opposition party leaders. And of course, there were like public fundraisings and for the campaign financing by the opposition parties, but those were not as significant as the ruling parties and the finance they got from the election board. Few civil society organizations in a way supported candidates for youth and women technically, like on how to campaign. They gave trainings for them. So that's the support they've got from civil societies. And certainly the major source was from members and candidates' contribution of those political parties. This is where the major challenge is, and as they need to pay for their own campaigns, and the problem we have mentioned earlier contributes to this challenge. We live in a poor country where no one wants to pay for election, where they know they're not going to win the elections, because obviously the ruling party has been winning for the past 6 elections that we had. So why would you bother to pay and raise funds and for the campaigning? Because we all know the influence of the ruling party. So that was the kind of dilemma we had. So let me go back to you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much, Sion, for those observations. I see you raise very interesting issues. I think there's something that we can learn from the Ethiopian experience, where there is a fund towards women's participation, as well as an incentive for use of media. However, I think the regulation there is amiss, and so it's an important aspect that we need to further unpack, and especially as we look at recommendations, then we can go down and look at that. I also like the issue that, and I think this is what everybody is kind of grappling with almost in all the countries in Africa, and this is the predictability of the outcome, that the ruling party will always have it. And so is it worth investing in an outcome that is already predicted? What should be predictable is the process, and the outcome should be unpredictable. Very interesting insight. And let me move to Mwanaisha and your perspective on that. And then later on, we'll go to our second round of questions and then open it up for plenary before we get recommendations from the rest of the participants. Over to you. Mwanaisha?
Hey, well, I'm Mwanaisha Mdeme, Secretary for the Youth Wing from ICT Wazalendo, as I was introduced. I also contested for the Member of Parliament at 2020. Yes, there's a lot of challenges that we face here in Tanzania as youth when we have issue of unemployment.
Are you able to?
Are you hearing me?
Yes. Are you able to switch your video on, please?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm just doing it. There's the issue of communication and networking, but I can switch it off.
Okay, as soon as you are comfortable, please do that, but please proceed.
Okay. Can I continue?
Yes, please. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So here in Tanzania, there is a lot of challenges that we face as youth There is high cost of living. There is the issue of unemployment. There is the issue of lack of inclusion and decision making. Despite of all the issues that we're having, but also when we come to the contestation, when we come to the election, there is a demand of a lot of money within in elections. And campaign also costs a lot of money, and also women and youth asked to participate. It has led people to be selected due to their financial capacity instead of their ability to serve as a citizen. And when we talk about the election here in Tanzania, there is a lot of issues like a youth or a candidate should have posters. We should have conducting campaigns, rallies. We should have making sure everything is going okay. But youth, as I said, we have a lot of problem here, like high cost of living. This youth, this young contestant, this young candidate, despite of the thing that he or she is facing, it is not possible for him or her to be able to participate in the election in good ways. We just have said, like yesterday, there is a panel which were presenting about the law of election. Of course, here in Tanzania, there is a law concerning the finance, but it is not well dominating. It's like the person who is very powerful can be able to have a lot of people, can bribe a lot of voters because he or she has money, and leave this youth who is maybe have a good will of making sure the differences within the country or within the constituent is being in bad situation. So for me, I think it is high time to making sure that we have the voices across the continent on making sure that the youth has been able to participate in the election despite of they are having money. Because sometimes when someone can say maybe we want someone who has money and they youth, but he cannot do that because there is a need of a lot of money in the election. So I think it is a high time to making sure that we have raising the voices across the continent on making sure that the youth are being participating in the election, and also being able to be selected not because of the money that the person has, but the ability on being there to be part of the changes, which I think is most important phrase. So as I said, I contested. It wasn't easy for me because by that time when I was contesting for the member of parliament, I was 29 years old, and being the young woman contesting, it wasn't easy because I was in like the person from another party whom I was fighting with, he's very powerful and he has a lot of money, so it wasn't easy. So I know, and I have that experience, and I think it's not a good thing, and I think we have making sure that we are fighting this and making sure that the election is coming not due to the money, but to the ability of someone within the election. Thank you. Maybe I can end there. Oh, unless there is a question.
Right. Thank you very much for that perspective. I like the comparison you make in terms of money versus leadership capacity. Are candidates only recognized based on how much resource they have for them to contest, or indeed are we also focusing on the leadership qualities and the capacity that they bring to the fore? Just before I go to the panelists, I mean to the participants, I want to just bring you back to other cultural barriers. And I understand that some of these have been raised already in your remarks. But Mwanaisha, let's just quickly talk about what are some of these barriers that are cultural in nature that need to be dismantled, or that you feel are contributing to the aspect of negative contribution to the aspect of participation of women and youth in politics.
Yes, here in Tanzania, there is also that the barriers, which we call it taboo, or like a young person, especially a young woman, cannot lead. There is this notion that a young person cannot lead, and or he she is supposed to wait like maybe to participate just on rallies or like just be voters, but he or she's not capable of leading. But for me, I think that notion is not true, because we have seen a lot of young people who was participated in being a leader and bring a lot of changes within the country and continent at large. For example, we have Mwalimu Nyerere, who is our first president in Tanzania. He fought on colonialism and making sure that Tanzania has independence. And by that time, he was on 35. By that time that he became a president. Also, we have seen a lot of young leaders across the continent, Kwame Nkrumah, fight a lot for the independence. By that time, there was a lot of youth that the young women and young men at that time who fighted a lot and making sure that the development within the continent, the development within the countries. So for me, I think that taboos are not supposed to be allowed, but because we believe that youth also can lead and youth also can be part of the changes. And in order to making sure that it is happening, I think for me, my advice is as youth, the young leaders, that we have the position to bring the changes. And once we do that, it will prove wrong to the society. The society now will come to understand that, oh, if we give the position, maybe we nomination of the member of parliament, and she should bring a lot of changes within the country, she can lead and she can bring the changes. So of course, there's a lot of that taboos, but as a young leaders, we are having position. We have to make sure that we break that taboos, we break those notions for bringing the changes that is supposed to be within the country, so as to prove them wrong. And at the end of the day, we live in a country where, or in a world whereby the youth are given their voices. At the end of the day, to bring the changes that we want. Because as a youth, we have a lot of agendas. And I always say, if the agendas concerning youth, they're supposed to be said by the youth. If the agendas of the youth, a person who has 6 or 50 years cannot address it correctly. But if the agendas of the youth said by the youth, it is easier for them to be understood. As we said here in Tanzania, we have a lot of issues: high cost of living, there is the issue of health for the youth. Also, there is the issue of education. There's a lack of education for the youth. There is a lot of the loan board that doesn't give the youth a lot of support to be done. There is the issue of lack of inclusion in decision making. So this is agendas that we have as a youth in Tanzania. So this agenda is supposed to be said by the youth also, and we can do that in good ways instead of letting other people who are not the youth to say it politically. So I know that taboos there, the notion is there, but the youth, it is our right time to prove wrong and making sure that we are the part of the changes, we are the part of decision making. We're supposed to have the seat at the table, because in that table is the way the decision are making. And once we have that table, we have to prove them that we can. And if we prove them that we can, it will be easier even for them to believe on us and making sure that things are going. Maybe I can end up there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mwanaisha. Takudzwa, very specific. What are the cultural barriers that you believe and I think that you experienced running for office, or indeed the young people around your organization, CCC? What are some of the cultural barriers that specifically they faced? And I want you to focus mainly maybe in the run-up to the 2023 elections.
Thank you very much. In terms of the cultural barriers, you note that our African culture has since had the elderly participating in leadership positions. So culturally, that has seen the germinating of seeds of ageism, in which people think that there is a correlation between age and a leader and leadership. They forget that leadership goes to the assumption of responsibility beyond just a figure, which is age. They forget that you need not to be an elder or to be young for you to lead. It just needs your ideological orientation, your thought process to relate with the people, the intention and love, commitment to get people to a desirable end that should drive you to become a better leader rather than age, which is just a number. So we have also witnessed that as we were going to the 2023 election on the 23rd, just the past weeks. We noted how young people were used as agents of violence rather than being representatives. So instead of them participating in what matters, they would rather be sent to beat up people. Sometimes they would be sent to be or confined to be campaign managers. You know, it's funny how the elderly appreciate the mind of the youth when it comes to running their campaigns, but they do not appreciate the mind of the youth when it comes to occupying positions and zones of authority in leadership. So we also witnessed that in which in several political parties, in other political parties, young people were participating fully, but in the back of another leader. So that culture of having young people driving up and about, doing APCD, making sure that logistics are in place, but not assuming the responsibility of leading has been a cancer to from a cultural perspective. And also, I think when it comes to women, where people think that young women cannot also lead because of the patriarchal nature of society. You know, patriarchal societies think that women are confined into kitchens. They're supposed to be, wives, but they don't see and appreciate that if they have a chance to sit on the table of deciding where the nation is going, it means that we have a united nation, and also unity is somehow related to the development of each and every nation. So I think culturally, this is what we witness. And I think in Zimbabwe, as we were going to the election, we also witnessed how young people could not, come up with strategic mechanisms to avoid such barriers, because either way, even the laws were by themselves trying to target the young minds and the young leaders to say no. When it comes to becoming member of parliament, there is an age restriction, but when it comes to voting, someone votes when they are 18, they get to vote. But when it comes to representing people, you need to be 21. For you to be mayor, sometimes you need to be 40. For you to be in Senate, there is an age limit. Yes, those age limit might be necessary, but you also need to sit down and think if those are not part of the cultures that we need to think through and review, because they might be confining people to think that there is a relationship between leadership and age. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Takuzwa. And you just reminded me of a conversation I had with colleagues a few weeks ago. Who decides who should vote and who should be voted in office? On one hand, you say somebody who's 18 is responsible enough to vote, but they cannot contest a seat at one level. They will have to be 21. And so on and so forth. So just keep that at the back of your mind as we go ahead. And I think we need then to relook at this, who decided this at the end of the day. Let me move to you, Albina, and then we can invite our discussant, our participants to weigh in on the discussion as well.
Thank you so much. Okay, so much of the barriers that we face as women and youth, like my comrades mentioned, most of them is age related, and some of them, especially if you're a woman, it has to do with your marital status. I don't know who came up with the idea to say if you're a woman and you're unmarried, you're not fit to be a leader and all those things. I think those are some of the challenges that a lot of young people who wanted to venture into politics were facing. because they would ask them questions like, are you married? And if you're not married, how are you going to lead the people? And it's a thing whereby they do not understand that marital status do not necessarily relate into leadership, because we've seen some people who are married and are unable to actually lead or perform. And I think those are some of the barriers. And apart from that, it's something that Takuza mentioned, something to do with, if you're a woman, you're expected to be a wife or a mother, and you're expected to be in the kitchen. You cannot take part into decision making and all those things. I think it's high time as Africans or African leaders that we started looking into people's capacities and capabilities than their marital status. Because I know a lot of young people who are able to perform, who are able to like carry out decision making and lead their people, than people who are actually orderly. And in this digital world that we are venturing in, a lot of young people have their ideas. A lot of young people are able to bring innovative decisions that can help our people. It's the thing that we, I hate to say it, but we are somehow traditionally backwards, that we still believe in those odd norms that people cannot lead unless they attain a certain status in society. But the thing is, everybody, if they're born with that leadership in them, we can nurture it, and we can actually bring those ideas to help our continent. Because I believe the African continent has a lot of resources, and we are able to make the best for our people. But it's because we let people who are incapable of leading our people, who are deceiving our people, to take the first foot, and let those people who are very much like educated to be in the forefront. So I feel if we're able to work together and remove some certain barriers, we'll be able to deliver to the African people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Albina, for those views. And indeed, yeah, the challenges with regards cultural barriers are indeed shared across the countries that I've presented so far. Let me just quickly now open it up for contributions from participants. You can either make your comment in the chat box. I see a number of those comments already. But then if you have a specific question, please raise your hand and let me know who it is directed to, or indeed if it's just a general comment.
Can I say something?
Henry. Yes, Henry, and thank you for breaking the silence.
Yeah, thank you very
Hello?
much. Okay.
Can I go on?
Okay, let's have Henry first, then you speak next. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter, and of course the panelists. My issue is about seeking to understand what the young people on this panel think in the situation where Africa is going through a spell of military takeovers, and some of these are being engineered by young people. And in other countries where military takeovers have not happened, we have seen incumbent presidents, instituting coups of their own by, amending the constitution, changing the constitutions to make sure they can stay in power. So, as young people, what is it? What is the response they think they can have? What role can they play in ensuring that Africa undergoes democratic renewal, but also ensuring that the men and women that have made it their business to rape and flounder the constitutions of their own countries to stay in power, are stopped? I want to hear the views from the understanding of the young people. What do they think they can do within their means as young people, and what role do you think you can play? Because the elderly, as you speak, seem to have let you down because they have just paid lip service as these leaders continue to rape the constitutions. Thank you.
Henry, and we have a hand from Haptan.
Hello.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you for giving me this chance. I am Abtam from Ethiopia. Are you hearing me?
Abtam, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm a little bit struggling with connection, that is why. In fact, I don't have a question, but I want to add some ideas or suggestion on what Zion has already mentioned. He has already touched all the issues in relation to women and the youth participation, special political participation in Ethiopia, as she have tried to touch in Ethiopia. And actually, this is not only in Ethiopia, in Africa. Political finance supporting democracy is one of the main challenges in Africa. Many play a great or significant role in fostering in political participation in Africa in general. This is the most critical problem. But when this issue comes the worst things in Ethiopia when it comes to political financing. So when we examine or look into the cause of the factor, the first one is that the old discriminatory belief of the society in Ethiopia. Normally, the political, not only in political, even every social life is discriminatory. They are against the women and the youth. In Ethiopia, especially in rural area, women are considered, they are not born to lead, not only taking in political participation in other social aspects, they are not born to lead. So this is the first challenge that hinder women and youth political participation. The other thing that the issue is this issue is financing. Women and the youth are dependent. They are not economically independent. Most of the women and the youth are economically not independent. As this is one of the most important challenges in Ethiopia, because as Theon mentioned earlier, politics need investment. It need investment, it need finance. So as far as they are not economically independent, they cannot fully engage in political participation. The other thing is that generally in Ethiopia, there is no law that regulates finance separately. That means we don't have finance law, especially as compared to other African countries. There is no separate finance law in Ethiopia. The issue of finance is normally regulated under the proclamation that regulate all aspects of political participation. We don't have a separate political finance law. The other point is that earlier, they mentioned that there is some requirement from the political parties. The law require political parties to bring women to leadership position, to have some members of women. By the way, this law is not to empower women. Rather, the very intention of the law was to exclude opposing parties because empowering the women to the and bringing women to the leadership position or empowering them to participate or take part in politics need resources. Resources.
In winding up.
Hello?
Please wind up so we can take.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Are you done? I was saying, please wind up your point, and if you didn't finish, please finish so we can move to the next contribution. So,
okay, thank you. I've finished.
Okay, thank you very much for that contribution. Tim? Tim, you have your hand up? Or Tim, if you are speaking, your mic is on mute, and please advise if your hand is dropped now. Or Tim, your mic is still on mute. Let's proceed. It seems there are no other comments, but Henry asked an important question to the panelists, and any of you can add a word to that particular question. So in no particular order, and anyone that feels can start, please do so. The question was for Takozwa, Sion, and Albina, as well as hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes, please.
Can you just retake the question? My network just got interrupted a bit.
So the question was, and Henry, please feel free to rephrase if need be, what role the young people can play, or what they can do to stop this continued violation of constitutions by regimes or presidents, heads of state in these countries where we've seen a number of coups. Henry, please correct me if that is what you wanted to get from the panelists.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I wanted to get from the panelists, because I wanted to hear the view of the young men. Because in situations like this, the nation would then resort to the young energies and the young thinkings to see what exactly do they think should be done And if you look at what's happening in Burkina Faso, where one of their own colleagues, a young man, decided to take charge to stop this, but not to be misunderstood to be advocating for military takeovers, but I think the views of what the young people who are the majority in many of these countries where constitutions are being ripped to entrench autocracy, what do they think they can play? They are the leaders. What do they have on their mind that they think can be done to stop the ongoing raping of national constitutions, but also the growing autocracy in Africa?
Thank you very much, Henry. I hope you got that right.
Yes, thank you. You raise a critical and a very important discussion towards targeting our continent and the regional dynamics in terms of politics, the coming of coups and the mutilation of the constitution itself. So mine would be a response in three phases. Number one, you know very well that these are responses of particularly the ongoing inequality gaps in particular nations. So the reason why revolutions are erupting, in a sense, is because of those inequality gaps. They come in form of the economic sector, socially, where we might have an elite class which thinks that they can grab power. You also have the role of the army in politics generally. So there is a need for us to define what we really mean when we say a young person. We also have young people who are part of the army. Their orientation and perspective to the discourse is particularly different compared to the young person that you might see in the street. But that's where you then see that there is need for us as barometers of class consciousness to rise up and say we need to start sharing and conscientizing the base around the disadvantages of these, mayhems and caprices, which are targeting the constitution and also what's happening. So we need to be there as young people, as intellectuals, to share information on how this is a cancer to our democracy. But at the end of the day, you know that young people are used in these revolutions while they are executed. So with us having that muscle to educate, we should also use a mobilization power to make sure that we have a critical majority that understands on the path that should be followed by a nation towards nation building. Because what is coming to Africa is wrong. Yes, we have young people participating in it. Yes, we have people who are being oppressed and suppressed, but you know particularly well that these coups, if they do not further the interest of the people, that is when they become wrong. So mine is to say that young people should assume the role of becoming leaders. But leadership is not only supposed to be assumed, but by the right people. So we need to have the right young people assuming the leadership responsibilities and roles so that we get rid of illegal and anti-people coups, because some coups come and particularly well in Burkina Faso, Thomas Sankara, from the historical issues, what has happened. There is an issue of the characterization of politics in Africa, where if we have had a coup in Zimbabwe, that might now be seen as a way or a transitional force that should get us power as young people. So there is need for young people to be educated that the ballot is the new bullet, that we need to accept democracy in which people power, people-led revolutions can assume power and also shun away the authoritarian tendencies that are being perpetuated by the dark forces that just come with guns get into the street. And this has happened before. Young people defining the course of revolutions. If you are to think of South Africa in the 1970s, think of the streets of Ferguson just in 2013. Think of Zambia, young people coming to play their role in a democracy. Yes, in Zimbabwe, you know particularly well what's happening with disputed elections, but it's commendable how young people are on the forefront to say we need to be using the ballot. But even though we are being denied to use that ballot papers come late, there is a cancer to our democracy. Some areas, when the election is on the 23rd, they vote on the 25th. In some areas, ballot paper shortages are there. So it all tells you about how we are being disenfranchised, even with our national interest to further development and to participate meaningfully. So meaningful participation of young people is also a remedy to end ill-begotten power by the states in form of cause. Thank you.
Takudzwa, any one of the panelists that wants to weigh in on this? If not, then we can move to our next item or next part of the panel.
Can you listen to me?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, so this is it. So like just to respond to the question that Henry raised. So I was just looking at this news about the coup d'etats that are happening in different countries in Africa, and I was like, I don't know, like until when we have to use weapon and force to take power in Africa. You know, it seems like we're in this vicious circle that we can't get out of. But I think you should start participating in the formal process, and they shouldn't be expecting anyone to invite them, because no one is really going to do that. We know what it means to take power in our continent. Young people should protect the process in order to have a peaceful and democratic system. So, like, I was just looking at comments on social media under the news about the coup d'etats, and people were like, "Ethiopia needs this," and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Because we can't afford to have that. We were just in 2 years long war, like a civil war in my country, and it ended like few months ago. And we're also having conflicts everywhere in the country at different parts of my country. We can't afford to have war, and in addition to that, a coup d'etat. So I think our only, as young people, our only way should be protecting the process and leading the process of democracy and peace. And that's what I'm thinking, because we're also expecting a national dialogue to take place in the coming few months, and young people should be at the forefront to lead that national dialogue. I'm just speaking from the perspective of my country, and we should be like leading that national dialogue and protecting the process, because the outcomes are going to be like very important to change the long-term fate of my country. And I think we shouldn't be like standing by to see what's going on, and when other people fight for the power, to take power, to lead, it should be up to us to be in front, to come, to lead. That's what I wanted to comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sion. And there's an interesting question, or rather comment in the chat box that says political party funding. This is a big problem in many instances. Political party funders tend to be the real winners in African elections. And they go to mention that there are issues of tax exemptions extended to multilateral companies such as mining firms, and this is very eminent in the Zambian situation. Kindly mute your mic, please. Agatha, please mute your mic. Thank you. And it goes on to say the former ruling party in Zambia was recently cited for getting huge sums of money from mining companies to fund their campaign activities. And how does the legal framework look like in countries which have drafted political party funding legislation? Any of the panelists can respond to this, but I think Henry and I see Chimuka from TIZ, who are doing a bit of some work around campaign financing, but any one of the panelists and those that I've mentioned could weigh in on this. Just how important are the multinational companies, and how is the issue of tax exemption a benefit directly to the ruling party in form of exchange for campaign financing?
Hello. Hello, moderator.
Yes, Otim, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for this great opportunity, and a good afternoon to all members that are here. Thank you for the deliberations. My main focus, as in general, based on what we are discussing today, is if we're looking at the inclusivity of women and youth into the political affairs of particular states within Africa as a continent, we should be able to understand the type of policies, or rather the type of leadership governance that embroids most of these governments. We have some particular governments that have been in the systems or have been in leadership for more than 3 decades. We have some that are literally new, and then of course, based on the cultural norms and settings of different societies, we also have approach where most of the youth and the women are not given room to participate actively in politics. Now, particularly in Uganda, we have certain areas or sub-regions that have not been keenly engaging women until I think of recent, that we have begun seeing minimal participation of the women and the youth in the political affairs and governance within those societies. Now, this has an effect on how certain things, are passed across if we don't see the young generation actively involved in governance and the politics of particular states. In Uganda, we have kind of a shortfall. We have a gap between the elders and then the young generation. The young generation has not been mentored in case the elders are to give over to hand over the power. We don't have any young task or generational leaders that have been incapacitated enough to push the country forward. We are still in that kind of loophole, or I call it a shortfall. Currently, if you're to look at like the question that my brother Henry Mumuguzi asked about facilitation of campaigns, I'm just trying to cut everything in and summarize in fact of time. There has been issues of funding, and when you have to look at the young generation or the young leaders, but you don't have the funding. And you find that most of the people that dominate the political cycles are the ones that have these cooperatives or corporations running. And they're the ones that have the rights to the mining industry, they have the manufacturing industry, then they have capacity to lobby from the outside of the countries. Now, if you are to give that to the young leaders that have the potential and ambitions, and together with the ladies or together with the women, you find that there is that lacking. We have lots of money rolling within the people that already understand the dynamics and understand the game of politics in particular states. Take, for instance, Uganda. We have people that are key in decision-making politically. They're the ones that sit on most of these rights to having these cooperatives, and then the facilitation or the funding to particular political parties. And then here it has just become a business. We have particular people that invest in leaders for interests or for their gains. If you're to look at Uganda and then look at Congo and then look at Kenya and Tanzania, there's literally a similarity in the way politics is handled. When you look at South Sudan, you're looking at how the oil money influences politics. Look at Congo, you're looking at how the mineral or the mining sector influences politics within that side. We currently are having been in interactions with a few people or a few of my business partners from Congo, and then you're finding that since they are going into the election period, there is already that scarcity, there's no money. So most of them have this vast, land, and then they are trying to look for how they can get people on a board so that they can pick up, a handful of the finances in order to facilitate the campaigns. Now, that is how the politics is run. That is how political parties also get to get the facilitation from this individual, persons. Now, I give you the finances, and then as the state, you give me the state machinery to help me win the election. Electoral commission as a body is always infiltrated by these money bags. The money bags come, and then they are putting up to sums of 2 billion Ugandan shillings. Now, when someone puts 2 billion on your head as a candidate and is facilitating for some other particular person, you're the one that has limited resource. You are not given the mandate to partake on the national case. You may have the ability, capacity as a leader. You may have the sound mind to ascertain and then formulate on the policies within the country. But the fact that there is a limited resource, there's limited finances, then you are out. You are kicked out based on the approach of very many people, and then the economical factors. Everybody runs for the one that has the money at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that insight, and indeed very useful observations there. But as we go to look at the recommendations, and of course I've picked out a number of recommendations which I'll be sharing momentarily, but to our panelists, I think you would prepare to then give one or two practical recommendations on how best then we can increase the number of women and youth participation. And I think from the start of the session, a number of issues have been raised in terms of, for instance, the quota system, but also ensuring that there is some form of political participation education, which then empowers young people and women to, whilst there is no money provided to them, then how do they use some of these strategies to engage with the communities in view of soliciting votes? We also
Mr. Moderator, just a brief one, just to add on what you have just stated. They've forgotten one or two things. There should be inclusive. There should the youth. Let me say the youth and the women should begin to actively engage themselves within the politics, the political affairs. If you want to be a leader, there should be that ability. There should be that sacrifice from you. People, the communities should see that you are actively or you want to take on the leadership. So you begin involving yourself, participating in some of the small activities. And that is how the people get to understand that you are indeed in leadership. In Uganda, if you're to assess the political cycles, or rather our political system here, we have women literally participating. We have women, what they call district members, district women MPs, or the women representatives that are sitting within the parliament. Now, each district, we have 150 something district. Each district has a woman member of parliament. You have a district woman MP, and some of these, but help in formulating the policies. The only hindrance we have with these particular women is that the moment they amass the masses, because they are the ones that are almost highly funded by the government of Uganda, because they have wider coverage. The only problem is that most of these women representatives, when they get into the into the house, or rather parliament or leadership, they tend to rather consolidate the power to themselves, and then you end up seeing someone being a woman or a woman representative for more than 30 years. denying an opportunity to the young ones that also have the potential to show. So I think there should be certain policies that are streamlined. That let's have possibly term limits. Term limits, they can be two term limits, so that 10 years, and hand over the mantle to the other people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. They're well noted. So as I was saying, there are a number of challenges that were identified, and I'll draw my panelists to then make recommendations to try and address some of those issues. I know a number of them have already been highlighted, but more practical and very specific. And I'll start with you, Mwanaisha. Mwanaisha, are you still here?
Yes, I'm here. Well, what I just come to understand is that youth across Africa, we have some challenges that we are facing. As I said, as I hear someone else talk about the time limit, that is the problem that we also have here in Tanzania. It's like we just find out that within a constituency, there is someone who have been a member of parliament for 20 years, for 30 years, and he or she is not ready to leave that position. And that hinders the youth to take the position. So the thing that is happening, and I think it is also hindering the youth to be there, because even the youth are just appearing and to take that position, they're just using their power, their money, making sure that the youth do not take the position. For the experience that I'm having here in my constituency in Tanzania, Dar es Salaam, Kigamboni, I have the same issues whereby the member of parliament within this constituency has been here for 20 years. And if we went into 2025, he will have 25 years, and he is not even seems to be ready to get out of the position. So the very big position, and also the issue of finance. The issue of finance, it is a barrier that is cutting across the continent. Here, of course, I just heard one of the foragers here said concerning the Ethiopians, like the Ethiopia, that it have the laws that are enacting the finance in election. Yeah, I hear you. But here, also here in Tanzania, we just have the laws. Some countries have the laws, but people or the government do not just making sure that the laws are in order. At the end of the day, the issue of finance become very critical. As I said, we have a lot of challenges, maybe the high cost of living, and that's if the young and he wants to contest or she wants to contest, it is a lot of the burden to the youth, and he or she cannot be able to have that position. So the issue of finance is very critical, and I think that the organization has some on putting this agenda, and to us in Tanzania in this year, because we just having the election next year, I think it is also the right time whereby we can just take this agenda also to talk about it in lower level, so as making sure we have that aware. Another barrier that which I think we're still having here is there is no, what can I say? There is no the transparency. There is no the transparency within in the election process. Here in Tanzania, when I was contested, it was hectic, because it was like someone going to the room and he or he votes, and after voting, you just when we come to the turnout of the voting that has been taken is different from the people who are just voters. That's why in this lately I was suggesting, and I think this is also a good thing, making sure that in election we're supposed to have the technology, that we should have making the technology so as to making sure that the election is transparent, and also the voters knows if I vote for someone, and knowing that his or her voter counts. So what I can end on this is making sure that we have that continent, that countries whereby the vote counts, and we have to make sure that is happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mona Lisa, for that and for being a wonderful panelist this morning. So we move to you, Sion, and I think for you, I noted the fact that there is a fund, which is provided for women, and also the fact that there's airtime allocated to also kind of cushion the expense of buying airtime on national television. So there are those incentives. However, you noted a challenge with regards how that resource is distributed. What practical recommendation do you bring in order to ensure that those incentives in Ethiopia actually go towards increasing the participation of women and youths?
Okay, thank you, Peter. So, like I've mentioned, there are like incentives from part of the National Election Board of Ethiopia, but even political parties are not using those resources adequately to campaign for women and youth specifically. So, I think political parties should specifically address those challenges by themselves. In fact, Habtamu earlier from my country has mentioned that these political parties use women and youth as to fulfill the requirements of the national standards, where this is a nice political party. They have more youth and more women, uh, but it shouldn't be like that. Women and youth are there because it's their right to participate in politics and because they have something to contribute, not to fulfill the dreams of other people, right? So political parties um, um, should use the money for them, like to be at front, to bring them as leaders. And other recommendations can be educating our people, because as I've said, illiteracy is one of the major challenges that hinders women and youth from participating in politics. And that's what the modern politics requires. People need to be educated. And the other is raising awareness for everyone on the importance of participation of youth and women, including for themselves. They should know that, as I have again and again mentioned, no one is going to give them the democracy and the freedom they want. So they don't have to expect anyone to give it to them. They need to go and take their freedom, make their democracy happen. So there should be also proper regulations and laws on how to utilize those resources by the election board, not just giving the money to the political parties and wait for them to implement in a way they wanted to. So there has to be like laws and regulations in place that empowers women and use. In addition to that, like those cultural barriers should be elevated from I mean should be prevented, because those are like the major reasons that hinders them from participating in general in politics and particularly in elections. In addition to that, maybe the last one is uh, I mean making our political landscape, the nature of our politics suitable for everyone, fair and equal for everyone, because it's very common in our politics to see older men in their suits than women and youth. So I think those are like my few recommendations.
Thank you very much. And we move on to Albina. I hope you are here with us. I've just seen your message, but please share with us specifically. And I think you raised a number of challenges, but specifically, how can these challenges be addressed in order to open up and make way for inclusion with regards to the participation of women and youths in politics vis-a-vis issues of money?
Okay, thank you so much. Even though I had some technical issues, I was able to catch up a bit. So some of my recommendation, apart from what my other comrades just spoke about, is that we need to influence policies that can be able to help youth and women to participate in elections, because most of the time, and then the policies are there, but it's the implementation process that's not adhered to. So if we can be able to implement what's in our policies, it will be a benefit to the young people and the women. And the other thing is that my organization advocating for a mixed member electoral system, because we noticed that the first past the post has influence in the exclusion of women and youths in participation. So we feel that if we have quotas or seats exempted for the young people, that doesn't mean that they'll be just given free of charge to them, but they'll have to compete amongst themselves. They'll be able to have a seat or representation in parliament, because right now, as we speak, if you check our parliament, how many women are actually representing the majority of women, is actually they're in the minority groups. So we feel if we can implement the MMES, we'll be able to have at least a number of women and young people and persons of disability to be able to represent the minority groups. Apart from that, I also feel that there should be an exemption when it comes to the nomination fees, in as much as the previous elections that took place, they had put a minimum amount for the youth and the young people, but that was actually also a big amount for them, because a lot of our young people and women are economically incapable. So if there's an exemption whereby at least they pay a minimum amount, that will be great, so that we can be able to have people representing us. I also feel that if women and young people are able to put in the effort as well, because we shouldn't just be talking about policies and putting all these measures in place, but also the young people and the women, they should have the interest in taking part in decision making, because most of our people, they feel politics is for the older people. So if they can start cultivating that interest, I think we'll be able to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alpina, for that. And I'm glad that even though you had a technical challenge, you were able to catch on quite quickly, and that is very important. And finally, we come to you, Takuzwa. Takuzwa still here? I see a couple of people had, dropped out in the course of the discussion. I hope you'll be able to reconnect, but maybe just quickly to run through some of the recommendations made is that, one, there is need for active engagement and involvement of young people, that they too need to claim the space and prove the point that they are available for participation. And this is in line with what Takuzwa mentioned, that the elderly people seem to be relying on the young people in terms of managing their campaigns, but would not want them to contest. And therefore, it's clear that young people have what it takes to be in those positions if they can actually manage a campaign for an elderly person. It means they understand what it takes to actually run politics, or to be in politics. Interesting, a term limit for members of parliament, of course, and other positions. This is interesting because we've seen a number of people holding on to constituencies or their seats for over 20, 25 years. And so this is one of the issues that can be addressed. Transparency in the electoral process as a way of enhancing electoral integrity. And I think this comes from building confidence that if a young people runs for office, they are assured that whoever votes for them, that vote will be counted and it will be accrued to that particular candidate as they deserve that particular vote. Establishing mechanism or putting in place mechanisms. This is in the case of Ethiopia, and perhaps something that other countries can adopt, where the money has been allocated for women and youth. How do we ensure that a political party that accesses such funds does not divert these resources to support other candidates who may be able to resource for themselves? I think this is something that all of us need to think about. It's an issue of unlearning some of these cultural behaviors, some of these cultural barriers. How do we unlearn the fact that a young man can still stand, among elderly men and be able to, provide a solution in terms of leadership? So how do we harness this conversation and break the barriers? Influence policy implementation vis-a-vis ensuring that we have an environment that favors the participation of youths, women, as well as persons with disabilities. Advocate for more appropriate electoral systems, and I think a mixed member system has been proposed, and I saw that there was a comment in the chat box about the impact or the contribution of the first past the post electoral system with regards exclusion of women and youth. And we think the introduction of such electoral systems then tries to address the issue of exclusion, given that first past the post is a winner takes it all and puts a very high stake on winning an election. And I think finally it's an issue of exemption, but also reducing the nomination fees. I kind of got worried when in the morning or when we started, somebody mentioned the reduction of the fees, but usually, EMBs would reduce the fees by 2%, which might be insignificant. But then how do we ensure that there is meaningful reduction of the fees to the extent that it benefits youths as well as persons with disabilities? We also had a recommendation on deliberate capacity building initiatives that are targeted at providing political participation education. That without money, how do then young people manage to mobilize and be able to share their views, or rather sell their ideology in view of soliciting votes? I think that also becomes important. The final aspect that I got was the issue of mentorship programs for young people within the political system or indeed in the governance structure. How do we ensure that political systems or political parties still maintain a level of internship or mentorship for people they consider young leaders or generational leaders to take over from them, or indeed take over their leadership as a measure of transition. So those are some of the recommendations that I was able to pick. And our time is 12:56 and we're supposed to end at 13 hours. So I would like to thank, first of all, our panelists this morning for your contributions and your insight. I would also like to thank the participants who joined us from across Africa, Asia, and everywhere else. But most importantly, allow me to thank ACFIM for organizing this important discussion and for according the Christian Churches Monitoring Group to be a co-convener, as well as allowing me to be your moderator. I hope I was able to represent you well, but for me, it's goodbye and over to you, Felix. Thank you.